I have always told you that the best possible way to go about this is what Zohran did and what I try to do as well, which is to make an argument that you want Medicare for all, healthcare for every single person, unconditionally, right? And then when people go, well, does that mean quite unhappy?
Ask you to end quickly by talking about Zohran Mamdani and just to bring the conversation to a full circle and just taking a look at how much of a threat he is perceived by a lot of people in the political class in the US and as well as in the media, because he's been attacked from every angle over the last couple of days, and the attacks are vicious, and I think it betrays a sense that a lot of people feel threatened by what he represents and what the generation that has voted him in potentially represents. And I wonder what you think about that.
Well, that's a large question, and I don't have the time to go through it in the detail that it warrants. I would say that Mamdani, he represents almost in a pure form the class struggle. You know, the famous line by Karl Marx in the beginning of the Communist Manifesto, the first line is, "The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles." The history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggles. And we're seeing in the Mamdani campaign, it's clearing the air. If you remember when the Bernie Sanders challenge to the existing system emerged, it got the powers that be tried to confuse the stakes. So all of these woke people, they started to criticize Bernie for being weak on the black question, weak on racism, weak on reparations, weak on the women question. They said Bernie bros. That was how they called it. That was all men, all white men. Of course, Bernie's campaign was all about the class struggle. Every night when he came out, it was attacking the billionaire class. It was attacking Goldman Sachs. It was attacking big pharma. But both the Republican and the Democratic Party both tried to obscure what was going on by turning it into an identity politics struggle. So the Republicans represented the oppressed white working class who are being oppressed by identity politics, you know, and affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion. And the Democratic Party tried to turn it into also an identity politics campaign. We represent black people.
Yes, I know. The Gaza doc that BBC refused to air, Zeteo is going to host it. I know. I saw.
Mexican, Hispanic people, sexual minorities. So each of them pretended, they wanted to obscure the real issue. The real issue was a class struggle. And Bernie was very emphatic about it.
Yeah, the left shot itself in the foot with the identity politics push in 2016 and 2020. Guys, this conversation can quickly turn reactionary. The problem with the Democratic Party is not that they care about gay people, trans people, black people, whatever. The problem with the Democratic Party is that they don't care about these groups, and they simply use these groups cynically as a defense mechanism to attack both the Republican Party, which also doesn't care about these groups and actively will campaign on not caring about these groups, but more importantly, against their left flank. Okay? This kind of cynical weaponization of identity politics is gross, and people recognize it as fake and phony. It is no different than what Target does every Pride Month, except for this past one. Notice how none of these corporations that normally would do Pride Month shit are not doing it now. I wonder why. Okay. People understand when you're just, being a phony, when you're faking it, when you're just being a fake ally. Okay. And simply using it as a way to push out actually progressive left-wing candidates. If someone genuinely cares about these groups, then that's great. I don't think you should cast aside defending these groups at all. I certainly don't. And the Democrats shouldn't either. The problem is that is supposed to be a position that you arrive at, or a position that you convince people on after you have garnered support with that most Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, can recognize will help them. And you have to be able to earnestly communicate that you are in favor of these policies, which is precisely why you have to apply the principle of universality to these positions. You have to have class first politics. I have never strayed away from this position, okay? Class reductionism is an issue in this community. Please stop. No, there is no real class reductionism, okay? Unless someone is antagonistic to marginalized populations and simply only care about like class first politics, even then it's still better than what the Democrats are doing, where they fake claim that they care about fucking, in the words of Norm Finkelstein, sexual minorities. Okay? Class first politics is still better than what the Democrats are doing. Okay? But even then, the class reductionism attitude is so stupid. Unless someone is antagonistic to marginalized communities, class first politics is not a bad thing. It is the best method. Okay? I noticed after the FD Signifier election analysis video was dropped, I don't even know if FD Signifier would agree with a lot of his assessments from that video that came immediately after the election. I had my criticisms of that as well. I have always told you that the best possible way to go about this is what Zohran did and what I try to do as well, which is to make an argument that you want Medicare for all, healthcare for every single person, unconditionally, right? And then when people go, well, does that mean trans people get healthcare too? You say, yes, of course they get healthcare too. Do you not want the free healthcare? If someone is that transphobic that they will say, no, I don't want free healthcare if trans people are going to get it, then, good luck. That person is probably not convincible. But you can convince a lot of people that are in the margins that don't necessarily care about trans people all that much, but certainly care about their own personal living conditions, their own standards improving. That is how you're supposed to do it. You are wrong. It's dangerous to put other people to the forefront of politics. What? You guys are misunderstanding this. Chatters with neoliberal latent thought can't conceptualize the difference between politics and policy. Yes. One of the things that angered me all the time with with both of Bernie's campaigns was how much the Democrats hammered him on, like, how racist he is. Bernie's racist. Why? Because he doesn't speak enough about black issues. And what they were doing was unironically racist, because every time Bernie talks about alleviating poverty, he's talking about black issues too. Okay? But for the Democratic Party, the only way that they think you can communicate to black people is by directly talking about criminal justice reform, which was also a primary part of Bernie's campaigning as well. But it's ridiculous how unironically racist and cynical this kind of pandering is. Like, you think all black people, the only thing that black people care about is criminal justice reform? What the fuck are we doing? Of course that's important. And of course that's a policy that should be discussed. But you think black people don't experience issues with lack of access to health care? When Bernie says, I want Medicare for all, that's also for black people. As a matter of fact, for black and brown people, it's even more significant because they live in underserved communities. If they have a higher likelihood of being in the grips of poverty, those kinds of universal policies unironically end up helping black and brown communities even more. That's it. I've said this before, where if you don't first make an argument that is broad, if you don't first come up with policies that are class-based, you are going to keep losing. Because even violence at the systematic level, like the structural violence that people experience, like poverty, the systematic violence that people experience, they experience on the class level. This is precisely the reason why. In the United States of America, while a black person, no matter how wealthy they are, can experience racism, obviously the condition of a black woman like Oprah is far better than a white homeless person. That's class. Okay? That's class. And there was a point in time in American history where a white homeless person would not trade places with the wealthiest black person, for sure. But that's not the case any longer. This doesn't mean that black people, or this doesn't mean that like racism doesn't exist anymore. Systemic racism is still very much a major part of how people experience how people experience it in their day-to-day, okay, in their normal existence, okay? So a white homeless person can have better health than a black person? Wait, what? Politics, huh? So a white homeless person can have a better health than a black person? What? Black people in this day and age that experience systematic racism, okay, are still experiencing it from the perspective of class violence. Aside from the stigmas that still exist, aside from stereotypes and stigma and all of these other like systematic forms of oppression that lead to a distorted outcome for black people in like the criminal justice system, for example. Black people and white people consume drugs at the same rate. Black people go to prison. Black people have a higher likelihood of going to prison or being stopped at a police stop and actually receiving longer penalties than white people do for the same exact crimes, okay? This kind of stuff is also still a form of class violence, okay? It is impossible to separate class from race. That's it. You always have to start off with a class first attitude. You always have to start off with a class first statement, or with a class first position. Intersectionality starts with class. This doesn't mean that you turn a blind eye to systemic forms of discrimination. Of course not. But class is at the root of this.
Now with Mamdani, that sort of identity politics is not going to stick with him. You can't say a fellow named Mamdani is weak on race questions, ethnic questions, religious questions. It's not going to work.
This is where Norm is wrong. They have said that, and they started doing that, but Cuomo lost. One very cynical way that the Democrats do this is they'll weaponize the black boomers, okay? They will quite literally say, oh, well, black people are voting for this person. Black people want this person. So you must be racist if you don't. They literally did this with Joe Biden. If you remember, they did this with Joe Biden when people were like, hey, Joe Biden, you need to drop out. You're too old. The media was like, oh, y'all gonna learn today. Black people want Joe Biden. You must be racist for wanting someone else to be running for president as opposed to Joe Biden. This is hysterical from a union that endorsed Andrew Cuomo. It means that their enthusiasm for Cuomo was not even lukewarm. They said it was racist even when people were saying replace him with Kamala. Yeah, 100%. It's insane, dude. That is like, that I think was the most transparent pandering and the most cynical attempts at identity politics that I had seen from the Democratic Party. But that is practically exactly how That is its practical application. That is the only thing the Democrats care about. Okay? They have a turnout machine and a very loyal base of support within especially older black populations, especially black women, and they will literally throw that in your face, or they'll be like, excuse me, you must be exhibiting misogynoir. That is a byproduct. Isn't this guy Hindu phobic? That's amazing. Why? Because he said what he said about Modi and Gujarat. Is that what you think? That was one of the funniest things I heard too. People were like, I can't believe he said that about Modi. Wasn't Modi not allowed in the United States of America for an extended period of time until recently? Why was that the case? Yeah. Modi was banned from the U.S. for a decade by the U.S. government for the same reason Zohran doesn't like him. But if Zohran says he won't meet with him, it can only be due to a blood feud. That's proof of his foreign ethnic attachments. This dipshit Roman helmet guy says, I don't understand. Why does a New Yorker have a blood feud against Modi? Zohran Mamdani, the first potential South Asian mayor of New York, called India Prime Minister Modi is a butcher of Gujarat. When asked if he would meet with Modi if Modi's in New York, Zohran said he would never meet Modi. He literally said, it's because of his foreign ethnic attachments. My father, his family is from Gujarat, and his family is Muslim. I'm Muslim. And Narendra, mass slaughter of Muslims in Gujarat. Is that not enough proof for you? You might think it's valid that he feels this way because of his foreign ethnic attachments, but pretending like he doesn't have any is just silly. No, he said his ancestry didn't play any role, but the video disproves your point. He brings up his ancestry to provide some authority for his claim about Modi, not to explain it. That's why at the end, he says we should treat Modi like Netanyahu adopting an impersonal legal frame of criminality, which was the same as the U.S. government's when it banned him. But hey, he's a Muslim Indian guy from Uganda. So obviously he can't actually have this opinion on the basis of humanity, on the basis of like people's actions or whatever. He must actually have deep ethnic tensions and deep ethnic resentment.
President Narendra Modi, and this will go to you first.
Come on,
Lander of India.
I remember this. It was funny.
I was supposed to get Netanyahu, and he was supposed to get Modi. Didn't you even get the memo?
You all get all of them. So
Modi is holding a rally in Madison Square Garden. He wants to hold a joint press conference with you afterwards, reaffirming the strong bond between India and New York. Do you agree to the event?
No.
All right, Mr. Stringer.
No.
And Mr. Mamdani.
No, and I just want to say something here, which is that my father, his family comes from Gujarat in India, and his family is Muslim, I'm Muslim. And Narendra Modi helped to orchestrate what was a mass slaughter of Muslims in Gujarat to the extent that we don't even believe there are Gujarati Muslims anymore. And when I tell someone that I am, it's a shock to them that is even the case. And this is someone who we should view in the same manner that we do Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a war criminal.
And speaking...
Yeah, it seems like the white guys were also saying no. I guess they also have deep ethnic blood feuds. Roman helmet guy being butthurt over Hindu issues, another Indian LARPing is a white national? No, that's a real TikToker. Roman helmet guy is a real TikToker that I thought he's a white guy. I thought that he was like a little sus. I have seen some of his videos in the past, but because he was like Roman helmet guy, I thought he was obviously sus. He's not like a Uttar Pradesh Andy. This is a real white dude. He's on TikTok. Calm down, everybody. Not every white nationalist on Twitter not every white nationalist, white supremacist on Twitter is an Indian dude, okay? No, this dude is a real person. Like, this dude is a genuine white nationalist as opposed to an Indian guy presentalist in the West. Anyway, is obsession with Rome a definitive sign of white nationalism? Not always, but in his case, it proved to be true. I'd only seen some of his videos, and I thought I'd only seen some of his videos, and I thought he was a little suspicious, but I didn't realize like how bad it was. I've been saying from day one why the global North cannot stand up for Palestinians. If they acknowledge Israel as unethically occupied Palestinian land, then all indigenous people in the global north will ask for their land back too. She said the quiet part out loud.
I don't care if you believe that Palestinians are indigenous to the land of Palestine. That does not mean they get to have their own country within the current country of Israel. Let me explain. Almost every single country in the world.
Wait, this is really funny because everyone is like talking about, everyone's talking currently about Mahmoud Mamdani's correct take that all countries are genocide. Like nation states are a genocidal concept, which is literally true. He's an academic. Zohran Mamdani's father, Mahmoud Mamdani, is a Muslim academic. And people are trying to criticize Zohran over what his father has said about how all nation states, like the concept of a nation state, is genocidal. As an academic, he is right. This is true. There are very few countries that have not created a nation state without genocide. There are very few countries that haven't participated in any sort of like wholesale slaughter. It's just the truth. But it's weird that the whole point that is like idiotic about this is that just because it's the truth doesn't mean we should continue doing it. Okay? Like that's that's it. The whole point is you read it in the history books and you go, wow, that's really up. We shouldn't do that again. And while it's literally happening again, people are like,
I don't care.
No, you don't understand. Like it's it's actually good. Let Israel have one, please.
Was conquered. Canada was colonized by the French and British. The land was taken from the native Inuits and Métis. In no way, shape, or form are the Inuits allowed to create their own country within Canada. They were indigenous. Australia was colonized by...
This is just might is right, dude. I wouldn't be talking this big of a game if the entire might is right politics revolves around unconditional and unlimited support from the West, lady. I mean, she probably is in Canada. That's why she's talking about Canadian First Nations people. But, you know, if you're doing this at the behest of Israel, this is not a very good argument. Might is right only goes as far as you're mighty, okay? One day you might not be so mighty. I mean, think about it this way. A country that has been gutted by sanctions was able to strike a blow to the impunity of Israel, okay? And that is with Western support. Now imagine if Western support diminished a little bit. Imagine if it went away.
By the British, and the land was taken from the indigenous Aboriginals. Are they allowed to have their own country within Australia? Southern Australia is now going to be a new country because they were indigenous. No, that is not the way the world works.
I think that, like, obviously the moral thing is the exact opposite of what she's saying. But the practical application of this is equal rights, restitution, and reparations. And I feel like no matter, like, I don't think any liberal would disagree with that, right? Like, the morally correct position is that you're wrong and they should, okay? But at least, like, the practical position that most liberals would be on board with is a recognition of the atrocities and restitution and reparations that come after. You can't just say, this is how the world works. Might is right. You know, we're mighty. So sucks to suck, Palestinians, while you are in the process of ethnically cleansing them. Like, this didn't happen 100, 200, 300 years in the past, and you're just like talking about it. You're talking about it as it's ongoing to people that are saying, don't do this. This is unacceptably violent. And it's ironic because I am of the mindset of the practical application, which is not the displacement of all of the latecomers, okay? All of the aliyahs that have taken place, all of the Jews that are now living in Israel proper or illegally occupying Palestinian territory against international rules and laws. I'm of the mindset of immediate restitution, a cessation of hostilities, and an immediate restitution and reparations to the Palestinians with a right to return. She's literally doing the case as to why Israel doesn't make sense. A historic concept of indigeneity doesn't justify the creation of a modern apartheid state today. I don't think she realizes she's correct, just in the opposite direction. Yeah, also, That is ironically what is the made up mythology surrounding Israel, which is this was our land 3,000 years ago. It belongs to us, which is why we have to ethnically cleanse the people that remained, which happen to have closer association with our historic forefathers than even we do. Not that it matters, because you can't make the argument. The irony is that if like land back, when people talk about land back in this cynical fashion, they don't mean that like the indigenous tribes need to do 9/11 every day to New York. Okay, that's just the fantasies of like edgy Sakai readers. Okay, like that's the edgy settlers readers that fantasize about a future that is never going to happen. Okay, it's ridiculous.
Works. In 1948, the Jews fought a war against the Arabs and Palestinians on the land. The Jews won that war. I don't care that we were indigenous. I don't care that Palestinians were indigenous. It is our land. It is now a country. No other country in the world is expected to separate part of their country and give it to the indigenous people. No, but somehow that argument makes sense for all of you morons. It doesn't make sense for the US. It doesn't make sense for Mexico. It doesn't make sense for Canada. It doesn't make sense for Australia. And it definitely doesn't make sense for Israel. It's unbelievable how much Jew hatred blinds people into demanding things of Israel.
This is Shai Albrecht. Her husband is Eli Albrecht, and he was convicted of a hate crime when him and some others brutally assaulted a black man. They both act like he changed his last name to her last name because feminism. But it's because he's a racist idiot and didn't want the smoke. Wait, what?
That they would never demand of another country.
It's so crazy, man. It's crazy that like she's just saying straightforward Nazi shit. It's just, you know, there's a role reversal here, and not even a role reversal directly, but like she's just Jewish and a Nazi. She is a Nazi that happens to be Jewish. Like, and the victims in this circumstance isn't Jews, communists, socialists, the disabled, the Romani people, but instead it's just Arabs, what she calls Arabs, which is, of course, Palestinians.
If you believe that Palestinians
Let's see what this
are
response
indigenous
is.
of Israel, let me explain. The land was taken by the country and give morons. It's unbelievable.
You say Palestinians can't have a state because they lost the war. Fine. But then they should be full, equal citizens of the state that replaced theirs. That's what countries you mentioned can.
Yeah, that's literally the other. Yeah, exactly. And even though this is imperfect and there are plenty of problems that persist, like the problem with Israel is they don't want to give Palestinian citizenship. That's the reality, because it's a ethno-state. It is an ethno-state developed around Jewish ethno-religious supremacy. And when you are an ethno-state that believes and maintains Jewish ethno-religious supremacist ideals, you have to exterminate the non-Jewish outgroup. That's it. This is precisely why it pisses people off when Zohran Mamdani reverses the script and says, I want a state that is democratic with equal rights and representation for all. When people ask him the question, do you want a Jewish state? Why don't you want Israel to remain a Jewish state? And he says, because I want a state that exists with representation for all. That's a non-starter for defenders of Zionism, for defenders of Israel. That's it. And this is a non-starter for liberal Zionists as well. This is a non-starter for liberal Zionists as well. Muslims mad, quiet, what? Like on that same virtue, because no such similar dynamic exists in Iran, for example, Iran has 9,000 to 20,000 Jewish Iranians that the government protects, that the government is perfectly aware of. Like, that's not a thing. That's not even a question. Iran doesn't go, we have to ethnically cleanse all the Jews. We're fighting with Israel, after all. We have to literally cleanse all the Jews. And I saw some misreporting, some cynical misreporting that is so gross because they were saying there was a claim that like Iran had jailed 700 Jews or something after the Israeli bombing campaigns. That's not true. They did jail 700 people suspected of collaboration, and they do have a heavy hand when it comes to political repression. They have a heavy hand when it comes to identifying and addressing people who are potentially collaborating with Israel, but they weren't Jews. Okay, the people that they arrested weren't arrested on the basis of being Jewish. And I don't even think that there were, I don't think that even the majority of the people arrested were Jewish. I don't even know how many of the 700 people that were arrested were Jewish at all. They were not. The idea that the Iranian government arrested 700 Jews is bullshit. It's a lie. They arrested 700 people who live in Iran. Iran has, by law, Jewish representation in the government in a country of 92 million. What other country offers representation to such a tiny minority by law? If anything, they probably arrested a higher percentage of Kurds rather than Jewish Iranians. Jewish Iranians are a part of the Iranian population. Even the J-Post article corrected it. Iran arrests at least 700 nationals for alleged ties to Israel. 6 additional people have been executed on suspicion of collaborating with Mossad, Israel's public broadcaster Khan News reported. Now, that's really interesting because the people, where is it? The J-Post initial headline for this article arrests 700 Jews. That's not the case. Editor's note, the headline of an earlier version of this report said that 700 Jews were arrested instead of 700 people. This mistake has since been corrected. Tehran's Jewish community holds ceremonies supporting regime. Meanwhile, a special gathering of Tehran's Jewish community took place to show support for the Islamic Republic regime earlier on Thursday, celebrating the Iranian armed forces' decisive response to Israel's airstrikes, Khan reported. The gathering was attended by Jews serving in the Iranian military who wore military uniforms and kippahs, Khan noted. Doors open. Yeah, we don't know what the background of the people are that they arrested. We don't know what religion they are. This is just made up. Yeah. See, Yashar, when it comes to Iran, even though he is obviously quite reactionary when it comes to Iran in general, he will correct the record. Iran has reportedly arrested over 700 Iranian Jews and executed 6 on bogus charges of spying for Israel. First of all, the idea that like there aren't collaborators deep within the Iranian nation state is ridiculous. What do you mean bogus charges? What's bogus is that you're claiming that they're Iranian Jews. Okay, I highly doubt that they were Iranian Jews that did this. For the record, 100%. And there were some anti-Semites that were literally saying like, "There's a lot of Jews in Iran. If I was the Iranian government, I'd purge them. I'd purge them and purge them." It's like, that's bullshit. They've lived there for longer than Israel has existed. Okay, they have deep roots in Iranian society. Shut the up. Not only that, but also, once again, Israel admitted that their assets had deeply penetrated Iranian society. It's not fake that there are absolutely collaborators within Iran. This is based on, Yashar Ali says, this is not true. This is based on a false Jerusalem report that misrepresented data shared by reputable human rights organizations that cover the abuses of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Over 700 Iranians have been arrested and accused of serving as spies for Israel, not 700 Iranian Jews. This is a common tactic during crackdowns. The people often arrested have nothing to do with Israel. The Jerusalem Post continues to pick up random tweets, stories from Arab news outlets notorious for laundering lies for their home countries' intelligence agencies and various bad actors, resulting in the continued spread of fear and misinformation. Dude, come on. Stop. I'm pretty sure the ones that were executed were also executed after having already had a trial because they were arrested for spying before the Israeli attacks. Iranian Jewish community is the oldest Jewish community as they have been there since Cyrus the Great. Yeah, 100%. People don't fucking know that. Iran is also an incredibly diverse country. Okay? All of this shit is like people trying to literally say, well, Iran does this too. No, Iran doesn't do this. Israel does.
Canada, Australia, the US eventually did. Equal rights and voting for Indigenous people. The Inuit vote in Canada. Aboriginal Australians vote. Native Americans vote. They aren't locked behind walls, denied medicine, and bombed in refugee camps. Palestinians are. And no, those countries didn't ban indigenous people from returning to their lands. Israel does, even when Palestinians still have the keys and the deeds. So if you're against a separate Palestinian state, fine. But then let them live in Israel with full rights, the vote, and the right to come home. Because what you're defending isn't democracy, it's domination.
It's fascism. It's ethnic cleansing. It's genocide. It's apartheid. And it is an ongoing atrocity. It's just pure Nazi shit. Israel can't fucking cope with it. Israel can't contend with it because they rely on support from the West. And obviously, like, it is a great irony. It is not lost on me that a big part of the reason why Americans hate this kind of stuff, aside from the fact that they fought the Nazis, is literally because of tremendous amounts of scholarly work on the Holocaust. And while for the longest time Israel used this kind of research and this kind of academic work to justify the existence of a Jewish state, people are now broadly recognizing that this is identical to what the Nazis did, and therefore have learned that this is wrong. For many people, never again didn't mean never again just for Jews. For many people, never again meant never again for everyone. And if you also have this never again means never again for anyone attitude, which is the normal moral position to have, then of course you're going to be fucking upset with the actions of Israel. It's that simple. This is awesome. Survivor of Mao regime calls out Mamdani voters. They don't know history.
Socialism and communism. New Hampshire
I
congressional
love this
candidate
lady.
Lily Tong Williams and Manhattan Institute fellow Daniel DiMartino. Great to see both of you. Lily, what do you say to Zohran Mamdani, who is the Democrat now running for the mayor here? Or what do you say to people who vote for socialism?
Well, the people who vote for socialism are the ones who never lived it, who never suffered from the hunger and poverty and the lack of freedom and police state. So those people should.
That gotta be deliberate. Mamdana? That's the craziest version I've heard thus far. Like, I get it. Americans can't say ethnic names, okay? I get it. But goddamn, dude, Mamdana?
Should be educated about history better. That's failure of our American education system. Our kids don't know the history, and they bought into free stuff provided by government. That's how Mao sold the socialism, communism to millions Chinese, and the millions of them starving to death by his central planning socialist policies. So I'm running because I don't.
Yeah, dude, China's doing so poorly. Why couldn't they remain under the banner of nationalist forces and things went possibly become a vassal state of England or America and continue the century of humiliation? Really up.
I don't want this country become the country I left. And I don't want anybody to take away my gun rights. That's God-given rights. I will never compromise.
I love it. Well, Daniel, I want to ask you something that I'm really perplexed about. And it's not only young people that are gravitating towards the AOCs and the Mamdanis of the Democrat Party, but I'm rather perplexed and confused why white, I call them overly educated liberals, when you look at the breakdown of this Democrat mayor.
Overly educated? Overly educated. Okay, that's cool. I guess this is the type of shit that, like, I get annoyed when liberals participate in this, where it's like now they're just wearing it like a badge of courage and honor.
Mayoral primary in New York City this week. You're not necessarily seeing the working class. You're not seeing black voters, Hispanic voters. You're not seeing them.
What? Fox News made fun of Joe Biden for a year. Fox News never stopped making fun of the Democrats for saying this same thing. She's like, a real working class movement has, stupid people like black people and Hispanic people, not the overly educated white liberals. You're a Republican. What are you saying right now? This is no different than Joe Biden being like, you know, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
Them showing out necessarily, but you're seeing the white liberals, and those are the ones that were celebrating, cheering up and down for him. You gotta help me understand, what is it about that group of people that makes them cheer so ferociously for socialism?
Yeah, thank you all, and thank you for having me. Good to see you all again. Look, what really concerns me about this is what you said, Tommy, that it is really highly educated young people who turned out for Mamdani. And it is really not shocking because I went to Columbia for my PhD, and I saw it myself. People there are the most supportive of socialism. And the reason is because of our colleges here in America. That was one of the most shocking things I saw when I first came to America.
That's amazing. This guy is awesome. I was not expecting this voice. Is he Venezuelan? No. I mean, his last name is DiMartino, so I assume he's Italian, right?
In 2016 was that it was higher education that was captured by Marxists. And so what happened in Venezuela, that people voted for a socialist regime, unlike in China or unlike in the Soviet Union, can clearly happen here too. And Mamdani might not be able to turn New York City into Caracas because he's mayor and not tyrant, but
bro, they don't call me the hog whisperer for no reason, bitch. Oh, what happened now? Chatters were like, you did not say he's Venezuelan. Yeah, bitch, I did. Okay, I did. Because I know my hogs, bro. I know my international hogs. You feel me? Don't test me, bro. Don't test me. I got the hog radar on lock. I know my international hogs.
The point is, Americans are willing to vote for someone like him. And today is New York City, tomorrow is the rest of America.
Well, his campaign, he's the child of a famous film director, and his campaign is definitely kind of social media managed. It has that kind of film of like a filter over it. He always tilts his head to seem more endearing when he's on camera. Daniel, doesn't that have something to do with it?
I think he's extremely charismatic, and that's why he's extremely dangerous. I think he lies even when he smiles. I mean, I have very strong opinions about him. His middle name is actually after the dictator of Ghana, not some civil rights leader, but somebody who was named president for life. And so he's friends with the Democratic Socialists of America. That's who trained him. This is an organization that regularly sends people to meet with the dictators of Cuba and Venezuela. He does not want to make New York City into Scandinavia. He wants to make us into Venezuela. The question is whether we will let him. It's whether Americans will let these socialist ideas take over.
Lily, I know that you have fled horrible conditions, and so many immigrants like yourself, they're saying the same thing that you are. Listen, don't make America like the place that I fled from. Now, this is New York City. Obviously, it's deep blue. How concerned are you that other places, maybe not as deep blue as New York City, are going to follow this example? And do you think this is going to be the way that the Democrat Party trends?
Yes, I have seen the radical left wing of Democrat Party took over their voter bases, and that's one of the tactics they use. They use cultural Marxism, identity politics to divide and conquer. They control the media, social media, and schools, and cultural institutions, like take over some churches and nuclear families, and get the kids against their parents and walk away to authority figures. Those are very similar to what I saw under Mao's Cultural Revolution. That's why I'm warning people that we don't want to go down that way, because they sell you free stuff to get you buy into it. Once they totally disarm you and silence you and install police state.
I can't think of a bigger, more shameful experience than being a Chinese person who Mao played a formative role in educating and uplifting, only to fucking turn around and just bark for the most right-wing racist interests in this country. What a shame. Actual shame.
State destabilize our country, then you will lose all your natural rights guaranteed by the founding fathers in the documentation called the independence, our constitution.
Lily Tong Williams. And
I was talking to a Persian person I know, and she was saying, oh, my parents, like, they hate communism. My Iranian parents hate communism. They were like, some of them were killed by communists. And I was like, what do you mean? And she like explained the detail. She explained in detail like what happened. And it turns out that she had immediate family members that were actually Iranian communists, and they fled to Azerbaijan when the Shah came into power. It's the same thing. It's always the same shit. It's like Ted Cruz being like, oh, I hate communism. My parents were tortured by communists. I mean, they were tortured by Batista. It's like, dude, that's not, what are you talking about? Like, I know you are relying, I know you're relying on the average American not to know, but like, you can't jot that as a victim of communism if your parents ran away from the guy that the communists actually toppled, the American-backed dictator, Batista.
Daniel DiMartino, great to see both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
While many on the left are rejoicing in Democrat socialist Zohran Mamdani's success in New York City mayoral primary, some Democrats are speaking out against his proposals. Among them is New York Congresswoman Laura Gillen, who says Mamdani is too extreme to lead the city, and she joins us now. So great to see you, Congresswoman. Thank you for joining us. So this really is, first of all, were you shocked by the outcome of this?
I was pretty surprised, yes.
Why?
Well, I just didn't think that New York would elect someone who's a self-proclaimed socialist to lead the city that is the global epicenter of capitalism. So I was very surprised, and I spoke out because first of all, my job is to advocate for my constituents. I'm gravely concerned that if he became mayor and implemented some of these policies, we're going to see an exodus from New York. It's going to crater our economy. It's going to drive up taxes that will be passed on to my constituents, and it will destroy our state's economy as well. He ran a campaign based on a bunch of promises that.
So what happens when that doesn't happen? I mean, that's the real fear here, by the way, chatters. The real fear for people like this is not that, you know, what they're fantasizing is going to happen. The real fear is that Zohran wins and it doesn't happen. And then the people go, why can't we have that? That's the real fear. Make no mistake, because that would require every politician, Democrat or Republican alike, to actually do right by their constituents. They are not afraid that Zohran is going to lead to an exodus of capital from New York City and New York State. They know that that is not the case. They know that that's not going to happen. The real fear is that it won't happen and Zohran will be successful. And then that will require them to actually go against the interests of capital. And their positions rely on them not going against the interests of capital, but instead defending the interests of capital, as is what she's doing right now.
He cannot deliver on. Right. He doesn't have the legal authority to do half the things that he said he's going to do. You know, it shows that he either misrepresented what he can do to the constituents of this city, or he doesn't have a fundamental understanding of what the role of mayor is. You cannot raise taxes if you are the mayor of New York City. He sits in the state assembly. He should know.
Wait, why are you worried then? I don't get it. Okay, so he's making a lot of promises and he's not going to be able to capitalize on it. Then why are you worried? Why would that lead to an exodus then? I don't get it. So nothing will change?
Know that. And the governor has already signaled that she is not going to approve this tax hike that he is proposing. He doesn't have the authority to do that.
Or even a fundamental understanding of how life works. I want to play this because I think it captures. This is not a casual socialist, like, you know, some 18-year-old talking about stuff. He's actually thought about this stuff, and he's a true socialist. And let's play this clip real quick, and then I want to.
You're a proud democratic socialist. Do you think that is a platform that would work for other candidates running in other parts of the country?
Absolutely. I think ultimately this is a campaign about inequality. And you don't have to live in the most expensive city in the country to have experienced that inequality, because it's a national issue. And part of how we got to this point was through the endorsements of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders, who've been leading this fight against oligarchy across the country.
And you can hear him talking about wanting to rework the way distribution of wealth is done as if that happens through the government and the government is going to create a grocery store. And
if that's not how it's done, or if that can't happen, why are you worried? It's not up to the government to offer social safety nets. What are you, stupid? What is this, communist vuvuzela? What are you, out of your freaking mind?
It's kind of bonkers.
Listen, he addressed the cost of living crisis. Right. We are facing a cost of living crisis. But the way forward for Americans and the way forward for my party is to find concrete solutions, to find ways to lower the cost of living for everyday Americans and not promise to be Santa Claus and give everything for free when you...
Wait, okay, that's what he's doing. We need to find a way to cut the cost for everyday Americans. No, not like that. It seems like you want to actually cut the cost for everyday Americans, and I don't like that.
Can't actually do that because nothing is free. Everything has a price tag attached to it. So what I'm focused on is finding a way forward, and I think the vision for my party is reclaiming our voice in the middle, working across the aisle to find concrete solutions to lower costs and make Americans' lives safer and better.
Well, I'm so grateful for you coming on today, and I'm glad you're fighting this fight, and I hope you find other Democrats who join the sanity caucus within the Democrat Party, because we cannot have an insane party.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart.
Joining me now, Tomi Lahren, Fox News contributor, host of the Tomi Lahren is Fearless show. Clay Travis.
When someone says they're fearless, like when a Republican commentator says they're fearless or position themselves as fearless, is so funny because it's like everything you do is about how afraid you are of normal things. Like Tomi Lahren is going to now, Tomi Lahren of the Fearless podcast or whatever, is now going to tell you how fearful she is by free buses. Okay? I don't think you should call yourself fearless if you are going on Fox News to talk about how fearful you are of a pilot program where there will be at least one, hold on, sorry, pilot grocery program that is run by the state of New York.
Travis, Fox News contributor and host of Outkick and the Outkick show, and Mark Simone, WOR.
Dude, it's kind of crazy how Tomi Lahren was on a goddamn rocket ship when I first encountered her racist ramblings. A lot of people don't know, but I made my name initially. Oh my God, what is this hair? I made a name for myself by like actively going after Tomi Lahren's videos and dissecting them piece by piece. That was when I first went viral in like 2016, 2017. That was my first career move. A lot of OG fans remember that probably and know me from that back in the Facebook days. And look at her career now and look at mine.
Radio Hall of Famer. Thanks for everybody. So Tomi, am I being too hard on this guy?
No, I think you're actually going too easy on him,
No.
Larry. I think you could have gone a little bit harder. Listen, this guy is a huge problem. If New York City chooses to go this way, well, get ready, Nashville, Tennessee, get ready, state of Florida, because everyone's coming. And we welcome you. Please just don't vote for liberals if you come to our great red states. It also shows that as blue cities get more insane, red states are just going to get redder. I'm actually even more concerned, though, because if you look at the people who are voting for this guy, it's not the people that he proclaims to want to uplift. It's really white, overly educated liberals. And the fact that our academic institutions, supposedly the best in the nation, best in the world, are pumping out these kind of anti-militants, really, is really disturbing. That's what it's come to. Socialism, good. Anti-Semitism, good. Globalize the Intifada, a mainstream concept. That frightens me. Gen Z is lost. Gen Alpha, maybe even more.
Hell yeah.
Lost.
Well, we'll have to see. Clay, bring in here. Is this the future of the Democratic Party, by the way? I mean, AOC campaigned heavily for this guy. So did Bernie Sanders, or at least he spoke for him. AOC was on the campaign trail. Is this where Democrats are actually going?
And let me say this as we start the show. Congrats to everybody who kept their head, because I think the last time I was on with you, people were losing their minds over the stock market. You got a new record high close in the S&P 500, which is a sign that the economy is actually working and the underpinning of our economy.
I guess the stock market's not as fearful of Zohran then, huh? Huh. Interesting way to undermine the point that Tommy Lauren was making just now. Strange. It's just like, because if Zohran is this like radical revolutionary figure that's going to assassinate, decapitate Wall Street leadership, I suspect that the market would move in that direction, right? So what's up?
Still remains capitalism, which is something that Democrats really don't respect anymore. And here is where I actually welcome Mamdani, because what it represents is a real debate of ideas. When he was on CNN, I believe last night, he was asked whether he believes in capitalism, and he said no. And I think that's the real argument we need to have. And one of the only flaws I think that may exist for capitalism is it provides so much wealth and leisure for everyone that you can start to believe that maybe capitalism isn't the reason you have the wealth and leisure to be attacking it. And so, look,
my favorite thing is when these guys also talk about the recovery of the stock market. It's like, what happened? Because in order for there to be a recovery, there had to be a fall, right? What was that? What happened really? Classic Trump trope. Breaks something and then picks up the pieces after and basically stops continuously breaking that same thing. And then everybody celebrates him for no longer continuing to break said thing. Well, okay. It would have been better if he didn't break it at all. What the? It literally is the exact same thing that happened with Iran. Why did the United States of America spend hundreds of millions of dollars launching this insane campaign and possibly even $1 billion in defending Israel in the process, instead of just telling Israel to not bomb Iran? None of those things had to happen. 600 plus Iranians dead, 30 Israelis dead, thousands wounded in Iran, hundreds wounded in Israel. None of that needed to happen. Literally, all Trump needed to do was go, hey, Israel, I know you want to strike Iran real bad, but don't do that. He did it. He actually told Israel to turn the planes around successfully, mind you, because that's how much power he has, that the Israeli Air Force could literally fire up their jets and fly in the direction of Iran, only to have Donald Trump turn them shits around mid-air. That happened after the ceasefire, of course. My question is, why didn't that happen before the ceasefire? You know?
Democrats recognize that Bernie Sanders might play well in Vermont. He might play well in New York City and LA and Chicago and all these big cities that have elected awful mayors. But it doesn't play very well in the rest of the country. And I think we need to get AOC on the ballot nationwide. I think we need to get, if Bernie Sanders wasn't 83, him on the ballot. And allow these rigorous debates to actually take place, because I think Americans understand capitalism is the answer, not the.
These guys only say this shit because they know the Democrats will never allow it to happen. Because if the Democrats actually allowed that to happen, they would never lose an election ever again. I wonder which one of these two messages is actually going to work. Fake, phony posturing towards social safety nets, or a guy who has dedicated his entire 700-year political career to advancing Americans' material conditions and expanding the pre-existing social safety nets. I wonder which message would be better. Republicans can only say this kind of thing knowing full well that the Democrats will never allow it to happen.
But I think a lot of Democrats don't. And that is why they have this internal civil war in their party, which is represented by Cuomo against Mamdani. Mamdani won. I encourage him to represent more of the AOC view. Maybe AOC herself on the ballot in 2028. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, well, I have made the same similarly cynical.
Considering their reaction to Mamdani's Democratic victory, I don't think they want this. I'm getting a feeling that they don't actually want this, because if the Democratic wishes of the population meant more Zohran Mamdani's winning, I think they would probably kill themselves. Hasan, what's your views on Israel? One of the worst countries on the planet. Shouldn't exist. Doesn't have a right to exist. Dismantle it and rebuild it for giving equal rights and equal representation to everyone living there, including the Palestinians that have been pushed away. A right to return. How's that for an answer? You like that one? Yeah. Is real more like isn't real. And the people that are too racist to like live side by side with equal rights for Palestinians can themselves.
Comments myself. But here in New York, Mark Simone, this is the largest Jewish population on the globe outside of Israel. They're going to vote for this guy, for this, I call him Zorro because I could never pronounce his name. They're going to really vote for him? Is this serious? Is he going to be mayor?
See, they're not mad at Zohran. They're also mad at democracy, okay? They're mad at the democratic wishes of the majority population being addressed. Also, I get not being able to say Mamdani to a certain degree, but Zohran, come on, man, just say Zohran. Like, what? That's not that difficult to say. Him going, I don't know how to say that. I say Zorro. That is crazy. But once again, every single time they try to hit Zohran, they end up making him look cooler. That's an even cooler nickname, dude. How is this possible? How is it possible that every time they try to make him look worse, they end up making him look cooler? Zorro sounds awesome.
No, he's not going to be mayor. I think you said it. He peaked.
You say Zohran wrong. Bernie pronounced it better than you. Yes, I know it's Zohran Kwame Mamdani. Okay, I know Zohran. Okay, Zohran.
On Tuesday when he won the primary.
That's still my view.
Yeah, he's not going to go anyplace. Once you start taking a look at it, they've heard about this anti-Semitism. Once you see the tweets, once you see the old video, it's frightening. You know, also...
Bro, what's frightening is what you thought you could pull off with this hairpiece. What's frightening is that there are probably 10,000 Americans that tune into your radio show not realizing that the decision-making process that you have is so busted that you put that hairpiece on thinking no one would notice. Okay? I'm sorry. That's ridiculous.
So if you hate rich people, okay, but this is what we do in New York. It's a city of Wall Street, of hedge funds, big corporations. It's one of our main industries. It's like, if you want to hate cars, great, but you can't be mayor of Detroit. If you hate big business, you can't be mayor of New York. He's got nowhere to go but downhill.
You know, that's it. Just on that point. I'm going to come back to you, Tom, but hang on. Just on that point. I interviewed Eric Adams yesterday on the show, and he made some really important economic points. Now, I know his performance is a very mixed bag, although I think he's improving for time, but whatever.
Yeah, he's improved. Since the Trump administration basically dangled his pre-existing Department of Justice prosecution over his head, I've begun to like him more and more. Dude, remember all the people that said, oh, the New York mayoral race is not that significant. The New York mayoral race is not that significant. Look at how much Democratic primary victory has whipped up panic. These guys they're losing their minds. Bro, they're literally about to have an aneurysm. Zorro, legitimately an old school boomer era hero.
Small.
Yeah, I mean, literally, Chuck Schumer almost died. After congratulating Zohran, Chuck Schumer was hospitalized. That is not even a joke. That literally happened. Maybe the events were not related to one another, but in my headcanon, considering that there was no window of time between Chuck Schumer tweeting out a congratulatory tweet on Zohran and then him being hospitalized, I'm afraid I have to assume that those two events are absolutely related. He tried to kill him because of all the anti-Semitism. Yeah, that's what happened. Zohran is so anti-Semitic that his aura, his mere presence as this anti-Semite was enough for Chuck Schumer to almost die.
Real estate, buildings that are rented out, okay, little brownstones and little homes, little small apartment buildings in, Brooklyn or the Bronx. Those people who are not rich, okay, I'm going to leave color out of it. I'm just going to say they're not rich, would get hammered by this guy's policies. In other words, he's no friend of the minorities. He's no friend of the poor or the low-income people. That's why I think he can't win.
No, all these policies backfire. You should always remember that if you're a Democrat. They decided nobody has to pay the broker's fee if they rent an apartment. Landlord has to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
instantly the price of every apartment went up 15% to cover that. So it backfires on the people. It never works.
So he wants to defund the police. Okay, let's just start. This is like a repeat of the Summer of Love, right? Fires burning up in Minneapolis, in Portland, in Seattle, and elsewhere. Here too, I do not understand how New Yorkers can vote for someone who wants to defund the police. I don't understand that.
How did this city not learn its lesson from 2020? Was everyone still so afraid of COVID that they forgot the other dumb things that came out of that incredibly dumb year? The fact that New York City, and it's still not great, but it's gotten, maybe a little bit better from the 2020 days. The fact that they want to go backward, and the fact that they still think that defund the police is a viable concept, but not just defund the police. He wants to abolish ICE and prisons.
Mm-hmm.
He wants safe injection sites. He wants to legalize.
Based. Wow, that's so cool. Oh my Lord.
Sex work. Okay. This guy, if you thought New York City looked like a third world country before or now, wait until someone like that gets in power. You're going to see what socialism looks like in real life. And maybe that would be, to Clay's point, an educational awakening, but it would kill one of America's greatest cities. We can't let it happen.
Help me out here, my aged and infirm memory. Where socialism worked again, exactly? Where was it a success?
Okay. What do you call China? I mean, I'd say Cuba too, in spite of the crippling sanctions. But what would you call China? Like, and it's not like Zohran wants to do a command economy, dude. Like, what do you mean? I wish he had that power. He doesn't. Okay. But what is really frustrating about this is, like, these guys point to countries that we have fucked up, countries that we have punished, countries that we've destroyed, to say socialism doesn't work. Okay? Countries that we've never given a moment of respite to engage in any sort of socialization initiatives. Meanwhile, there are other countries that we have allowed to socialize to a certain degree, social democracies like the ones in Western. And it's not like Zohran is trying to say, like, oh, we have to do a workers' councils and, like, use the vanguard to militarily overthrow the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie to the dictatorship of the proletariat. He's literally trying to move marginally in the direction, with the limited amount of power that he has, towards countries like Denmark or Norway or Sweden, or even, I mean, I guess, like, even England before Thatcherism. Like, that's it. That's all this guy's trying to do. And these guys are like, well, I mean, well, think about what has happened to socialist countries. Look at Venezuela. It's like, what is that? Is that a threat? Are you going to do a coup in New York? Is that what you're saying? Are you going to strangle the New York economy with the hopes that this kind of fervor doesn't, this kind of successful socialization initiatives don't actually take root in the hearts and minds of Americans broadly? It's crazy. Talking to a local farmer dude this morning about this, I brought up China as an example. He said, China won't last. Your grandkids won't know the work China as a country. What? They're on their way out. The brain rot is rampant. Yeah, I mean, of course. Random dumbasses are going to be like, yeah, if China's any day now, it's going to get destroyed.
Oh, come on. Is it nowhere? Is that possible? And yet...
Could you explain why you like China to someone uneducated? All I've heard is an authoritarian state and scary, you know. I am not well read on the topic. Ooh, my favorite. I wish there was like one video that we could point to. Okay, I'm just going to say this. Even development, rapid urbanization, high-speed rail, what else? Yeah, I show speed videos, command economy, punishing billionaires when they do shit, even punishing party leadership when they do shit, laboo-boos, immense support for education initiatives. That's another good one. Almost universal home ownership. That's another good one. Everybody has a house. Think about that. Major steps in the direction of renewable energy. Cost of living is immensely affordable and kept in check by the government. Very little interest in a military war style intervention all around the globe. Virtually non-existent footprint in that regard. technological superiority in numerous sectors over the last 15 years as a direct part of Xi Jinping's 15-year plan. I think they targeted 20 sectors, and they reached sector leadership in 12 of those 20. Yeah, lifting 800 million people from extreme poverty in the shortest amount of time in history. That's a good one, None of this applies to Hong Kong. Why? What do you mean? Not enough time has passed to see what Hong Kong will look like. If you think China will continue punishing Hong Kong or something for the crime of being under the protective banner of England, that's ridiculous. For all their faults and failures, for all the repression that the Chinese government has engaged in, okay, for all the control mechanisms that they have, the one thing you can't say is that they don't work to make sure people's living standards are improved year over year to the best of their ability in a way because they understand that this is the most effective way to stamp out dissent. And it has been an incredibly successful way